Hello. Thank you. I guess I should probably note at the start maybe a content warning that there's going to be some really gross sounds. There's going to be some perhaps psychologically unpleasant sounds. I'm sorry that's incredibly vague, but I don't think you'll understand what I mean until it happens. So I guess be prepared to block your ears maybe. Nothing will go on for like too long. Anyway, yes, so this is called Thanks, I Hate It, and it's about making the sounds for Janet de Mornay is a slumlord and a witch. So this is about making horrible sounds on purpose, so I made a horrible presentation. Yes. So I'm a game audio designer. I've been doing it for 10 years. I've learned some things. I run a company called Supertonic. We make sounds. It's nice. I live in Brisbane. Yeah. Last time I came to Freeplay, it was to give a poem on stage. I think we were all invited to give poems if we wanted to. I wrote a poem about burnout using only the words you can push around in Bubba Is You. I got up and said, "Hi, I'm Zander, I'm from Brisbane," and I got booed. But how times have changed, and that's really heartwarming. Yeah, cool. So yeah, a quick rundown of what I'm going to go through here. I have no idea what's going with time, so I'm just going to have to look to you. Jeez. Okay, well, maybe there'll be time for questions if you are brave people. All right. So, yeah, rules are made to be shit all over, right? They say, first you learn the rules and then you shit all over them. That's the saying. So, yeah, as I said, I've been doing this 10 years. This is some of the games we're kind of working on at the moment. Or have sort of recently released. Generally, there is the things we're aiming for when we're making these. So there is a saying: "Good sound design goes unnoticed." I don't quite fully agree with that sentiment, but it is a powerful thing. Sound design normally goes unnoticed, especially if it's not so bad that it's distracting, and that means that it's a great tool for it's basically just subconscious subliminal stuff you can put in there then, right? Because no one's paying attention to it. So really there's so much you can do about tone or intention. There's just a lot of emotion you can put into sound design that I don't think people think too much about, but it's the door's open. Put the stuff in there, I say. But a lot of the stuff we're trying to do is normally we're trying to create make the game feel nice to play, right? Trying to make catharsis. We want sort of players to feel satisfied when certain things happen. So we're rewarding them for doing the stuff they're meant to be doing in the game. We're meant to help them feel like they're really involved and can just sort of lose themselves in the game world. We're meant to make sure that anything they do, they get just immediate feedback that yes, they've pressed a button, yes, they have scored a goal, or they've done damage or received damage, or all this really important information, trying to communicate that really clearly. And hey, I got bingo. This is, when talking about game audio design, it's just all this is the kind of bullshit that's thrown around all the time, but it really is kind of a lot of the focus of what we're trying to achieve normally, right? And I knew that'd be different on this project when this was the brief I received. This is a mood board that Pete and Scott sent me. That's the Fuzzy Ghost who are making Janet de Mornay. And I immediately got a headache as I opened up the PDF and was presented with this. And there was other useful stuff in there as well. But I realized that this was going to be a bit different. So here's, in case you weren't aware, just a quick look at what this game is, right? It's a queer horror comedy about renting and about normal rental stuff, and also about evil magic and just the stuff you have to contend with as a renter, right? This kind of stuff. So, yes, things are going to be different this time. Good sound design goes unnoticed? No. Great sound design makes you want to throw up. So, the horror of the mundane. Renting is awful. And so I figured that, like, while there was a lot of focus when we were starting this project on, like, figuring out what the evil magic was going to sound like and that sort of thing, right? I was also just very interested in, like, how we can communicate the horror that is reality. And one of those things is reverb to me. Like, for me, the thing that takes me straight back to my student days, crammed into a share house in Paddington, is like the horrible reverberation in a room that is underfurnished. When you've just moved in and you haven't unpacked anything yet, and you've got this sort of square, boxy room, and just the weird sort of like flutters and strange, horrible resonances and stuff that happen in a gross acoustic space, and it does psychic damage. It's not good. So, normally, if we want to have nice reverb, nice spaces, this is Abbey Road Studios. It sounds nice. We've got wall coverings. We've got asymmetrical furnishings, because parallel surfaces, these sorts of things create a lot of these resonances and feedback and echoes and stuff that we don't normally want. We've got ceiling panels, we've got, our parallel surfaces are generally broken up. So we don't have large spaces of flat wall facing each other directly, oppositely, right? Because all of these things, like these lovely curtains and people in the space, these sorts of things sort of diffract and diffuse and reflect and break up sound so that the echoes that come back, the reflections, become very complex, and this sort of generally tends towards a sort of, becomes more of a wash. And then that's when you get that sort of classic reverb effect, is actually this quite nice, just a pleasant sort of like wash that comes out from the sound, right? And you can cultivate these things with good acoustic design. In the real world, you don't have any of that shit, right? And so how do we bring that into a video game? Well, basically, sorry, this is a little hard because I don't actually have my notes. But yes, so essentially, like when you're making like a fake reverb, like an algorithmic reverb, it's hard to make it sound nice. And so normally a lot of work is put into trying to make these reverbs sound nice. Fortunately, making them sound shit is really easy, right? And the kind of spaces I'm attempting to sort of emulate are simpler. And because they're simpler, like physically, acoustically, it's actually simpler to model the behavior of sound in that space, right? And so the kinds of reverbs we get in, like just the stock ones that will come in game engines or in Fmod in this case, are actually quite equipped for that job. I already said that. So if you know a little bit about acoustics, you can actually figure out how to realistically create the acoustics of a crappy room in a share house, right? If you know how fast sound travels, and you know how the dimensions of the space you're working in, and you can add in a few other sorts of things, you can take your floor plan from the game and build out a set of reverbs that match that space, right? So what I ended up doing was I grabbed these parameters. I got the X of the room, the Y, the ceiling height, whether we were indoors or outdoors, how much stuff was in the room, how hard the walls are, and how solid the floor is. I think that's the last one. And basically, like, I used those in a bit of a complex sort of interweaving way, but basically each of these parameters is affecting one or more of these different parameters down here. And rather than doing it scientifically, I just literally started with a sort of a base preset. I turn a knob up and down, I close my eyes and go, does it sound like the room is getting like harder walls? Does it sound like it's getting this or that? And that's sort of how this came about, and I've sort of modeled it based on that, essentially, right? So here's some examples. I don't know how well any of my examples are really going to come across over the speakers, but we'll see. So this is, I've got some sample sound effects that I'm going to play through the Andrew's room reverb, which is one of the nicer rooms in the game because it has some furniture and a bunch of like bags that he still hasn't unpacked and so on. So not terribly reflective, not terribly resonant, it's just pretty all right. For the stairs, it's got a lot less in the way of sort of floor solidity, which makes the footsteps particularly resonant, which feels very hallway and stairy to me. But, you know, also it's got the narrower walls, and all of the reflection times for the reverb and everything is all based off the time it takes sound reflections to bounce in these particular dimensions, these wall spaces. So you see, you'll hear that the sort of lower frequency sounds and footsteps and things are a bit more resonant and sort of boomy, but the higher frequency stuff, not particularly echoey because the walls are just, you know, plasterboard walls and stuff. In the bathroom, we've got really solid floor, so footsteps, bassy stuff, not particularly resonant, but high frequencies really bright and echoey and fluttery. And then we have the toilet, which is similar but smaller with less hard walls. And we'll come back to the toilet, which I'm sure Robert will be glad about. So a sort of second part of this is psychoacoustics, which is actually one word, but I thought that was more indicative to break it up. So there's a few ways in which I attack you psychically in this game, and one is just with sounds that are gross, right? Here's some lovely wadded up newspaper and paper towel and stuff that I've wet and manipulated because Janet's magic in the game, a lot of it is sort of paper mache based, and so there's a lot of these paper mache sounds that occur. And if you are part of a slice of the population which suffer from a condition known as misophonia, which I think is not like, I don't know, it seems unclear whether it's technically a condition, but essentially it's a way of experiencing the world in which particularly gross sounds, and they're different for each person, usually the sounds of other people eating, these sorts of things will make you deeply uncomfortable and angry, quite irrationally angry very quickly. And usually, this is what we're trying to avoid, right? Another game it's currently in early access we've been working on is Cozy Caravan. In that, we have an accessibility setting where you can turn that on, and it makes all of any sort of squelchy, gross sounds become dampened and less bright, and just, you know, generally trying to minimize those noises for people who will find them unpleasant because it's meant to be a cozy experience. And so I kind of thought, well, what if I can like induce misophonia in people who don't even have it? You know. So this is what we've come up with. Here is the sound of some paper mache appearing. Delightful. Another way that I thought I might attack you is with some impossible sounds. So when I was at uni studying music, we did a unit on psychoacoustics and which is, I haven't even explained what that is yet. It's the study of the perception of sound. And so Diana Deutsch, one of my favorite academics in this field, discovered a whole bunch of weird audio illusions, usually musical, in which sounds, particularly for like if you're wearing headphones and you play sounds just to one ear or just the other ear or certain things at the same time together, it breaks your perception of what you're hearing and where sounds are and that sort of thing. Because really, like, our brains are exceptionally good at divining a lot of information about space and place and things from the tiniest elements of sound, right? Which is why this sort of reverb thing is so important, because if you close your eyes, you can still hear and sense this type of room we are in right now just by the echo that is on my voice from this space, right? You get a sense of the scale, you get a sense of what the walls are made of, all these sorts of things, right? We need to follow some very specific rules if we want to create that illusion in a video game. We want to say, here's a thing, it's placed just here. And so we'll, send certain amounts of the sound to different channels, and we will create maybe an infinitesimal delay between your left and right ears so that you perceive it as having hit this ear first. All these sorts of things, tiny, we're really talking in the millisecond scale here. But your brain can decipher that information, and it's amazing. But also, you can then just deliver to your brain sounds that will make no sense when you're trying to decipher it as information about a 3D space. So here's one of these things. So this is a musical illusion. First, I'm going to play the sounds of both channels together, and then we'll play just one speaker, then just the other speaker, and then together again, right? And so the theory is you will hear this. You'll hear the red notes, which is sort of like a do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do up high, and then you'll hear the blue notes of do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, right? As two things you're hearing together. What's really going on is quite different, but let's listen to it. So depending on how good the sort of stereo perception is in here, or especially if you're wearing headphones, generally what people will hear is they'll get a sense that the high trio of notes is happening maybe on their right-hand side, and the low is on the left. Other people, hearing the same thing, hear it completely the other way around. Or you may sort of drift in between this sort of sense of it kind of feeling like the sounds are around you, but like it being very difficult. You definitely don't get this sense of when you hear it split and you're hearing boop, 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 over here and that happening over there. You can't perceive that happening. Your brain wants to group together the sounds that are like similar to each other and think that they're coming from one place. And this can make you quite uncomfortable. And so I played around with this in the game. Janet has a sort of a TV shopping network sort of channel thing that she's on, where she sells weird, esoteric, magical gadgets. And so I sort of used a bit of this in the little chime that will play for the channel, where it's sort of like each note is like jumping back and forth. It just sort of creates a sense of difficulty of understanding the space. And that's maybe one of the more subtle ones, but I also enjoyed making that entirely out of like 90s FM synths, which felt like the right thing. Taking this further, I've got to briefly explain stereo phase alignment. So normally, you got a sound in the left channel, it's like, here's just a nice sine wave. In the right channel, the same sine wave. What you hear is a sound that appears to originate from between these two speakers, hopefully, rather than a sound there and a sound there. So I forgot that example actually played left channel, right channel, and then together. But the third one should have felt like it was in the middle rather than both sides at once, right? If you invert the polarity of one of these channels, right? You no longer hear the two sounds as being unified in the middle. So what I'm going to do now is I'll play one side, then the other side. Oh, an inverted sine wave, you cannot hear the difference. It'll sound identical by itself. But so we'll hear each channel, then we'll hear them together, Then we'll hear the original one where they're aligned, and back to them being misaligned again. So you can hear the difference through the... And there is, this is a problem you will encounter if you ever have wired up an old stereo or something and you accidentally get the positive and the negative wires mixed up on one of your speakers. Sometimes with like stereo, like music and stuff, it can be a little bit difficult to identify. So there's a site I use called audiocheck.net, which is really lovely. It's got great resources for this. It's run entirely on donations. And one of the files that they have is a rumble file that is, first there's one that's in phase and one that's out of phase. So you can play it through your stereo and you can hear whether it's working, right? And when I heard the out of phase rumble for the first time, I had just immediately, well, here it is. I sense that didn't work from here. But I immediately felt this bizarre pressure on one ear because I couldn't place this weird bassy but completely out of phase sound. And it just sort of, terrible. And that's sort of a feeling I hoped to inspire in others. So here is a sort of out of phase rumbling, which may not work well in this space because of the setup. And this is sort of underneath all of the sort of evil magics in the game. And it's, that's sort of there as sort of the hint. So here are some examples where that's happening. There's, because this is a rental game, mold plays a big part in it. Here's the sound of mold appearing. We get that lovely confluence of a gross sound and something that's physically impossible. Here's the mold remover. Janet, before an inspection, demands you remove all the mold in the house, gives you a bottle of her patented mold remover, which she sells in her infomercials. This is the sound of that working. So, we come to the third part, which I'm a little bit nervous about. But to give some context, so anyone here who's played Inside may have heard this anecdote that Martin Stig Anderson recorded some of the sound of the music through a human jawbone. There it is. And so sort of plays it through the jawbone, records it back out. It's kind of spooky. His sort of take on it was, well, it gives you a little bit of the sense of the impression of sounds playing in your own head or your own voice that vibrates in your own jaw, which you hear directly into your ears, which no one else hears that perception of your voice. I say that, well, I think an empty skull is not really indicative of human experience, really. I thought, let's use a full skull, right? And I will deal with the ethical consequences of that later. And I thought about how can we even do this? Basically, like, every transducer is a transducer, which I love. Every microphone is also a speaker. If you take a speaker and you put it in front of like a kick drum, then you can wire that into your mixing desk via like a DI box and things, and you can record the sound of the kick drum by the way that it moves the speaker, right? So, and even like anything that converts things, like, a toaster is a transducer. Hypothetically, you could apply heat to the heating element and generate electricity. This is very cool. Anyway, so I thought, we've got bone-conducting headphones, right? Why not make them into bone-conducting microphones, right? So I bought some of the exciter elements from some like bone-conducting headphone things. I wired them up into these very simple rigs I've sort of put into under the headphones there and attached them to the sides of my head. And then I recorded a bunch of sounds in my own mouth. What you'll see here is me doing an impulse sweep. that's going to take a long time to explain. So you can ask about that if you want, if there's time. But here's that. And that provided us with some cool and interesting tool. So here are some genuine sounds from the inside of my head. Enjoy. And when I listen to that with headphones on, I can feel it, because it's my head. It's a trip. Now, because I made the impulse sweep, I was able to capture the impulse response of my skull via my teeth, and now I can apply that sort of sound profile to other sounds. So now, having made a bone conduction impulse response through my skull, I can now play any sound through it using a convolution reverb. So, welcome to the inside of my head, I guess. But of course, now I can play any sound. Now I can play any sound. So here is a grinding of metal plates played through it. And that feels like a dental drill to me. And I can't actually get into why I needed those sounds without spoilers for the plot, so we're just going to gloss over that, and you'll have to wait to enjoy it yourselves. As a final point, and the thing that I'm a little bit nervous about, so we're asking Pete, oh yeah, what sort of things do we need done at the moment? What sort of high urgency? So yeah. Piss quest, it's urgent. So I thought I'd like to do that. But, he says, real piss. And he pisses sitting down. And Scott said, of course, remember, it's the world's longest piss, don't hurt yourself. And it's this type of consideration that I really appreciate. So, I am duty bound. And this is, I've got to say, part of what I really enjoy about being able to work on projects like this, right? Because, Supertonic is a business. I need to keep it going. We need to be paid money. It, means, it has meant for the start of when I started the company, limiting what types of projects we're able to work on. And it's been very exciting for me that in recent years, we've had so much more state and federal funding coming through, meaning that people, this 2-person team can put together a funding application and go, we want to pay Supertonic to make the sounds. And they go, cool, that's great. And now I get to do this shit. And I get to debase myself. Right? So, and then of course there's the technical questions, because we need to be thorough. But essentially, yeah. Pete insisted I include all of this. So, yeah, I think... But I got there. We got there. That's Robbie, one of our sound designers. And, yeah. So, we aim to please, except for when we aim to disgust. So, yeah, this is the end of the presentation here. I hope it doesn't color our relationships too much. If I know you already, I hope our friendship survives this. If we're yet to meet, I hope this is not how I am remembered. Allow me to present the piss engine, 100% genuine piss. You're welcome. Thank you. I'm glad we all survived that. That's no time for questions, is it? That's all done. See ya.